welcome to Real Housewives Bill with the tea sword, the wigs are snatched, and no one is safe. I'm Scala, and we're diving into the drama, the laughs, and the iconic one-liners humors. So grab your tea, grab your shit, and let's spill it. Today we are covering Real Housewives of Atlanta Season 17 Reunion Part 2. Child, if you thought reunion part 1 was messy, part 2 said, hold my peach. Because this lady came back to the reunion couch with more accusation, more receipts, more behind the scene drama, and apparently more arguments than were so serious that could even happen on camera. And just when you thought K. Michelle and Shamea's friendship couldn't get any messier, we found out that things got even worse after the cameras stopped rolling. Then Porsha decided to bring receipts, okay? Pinky and Phaedra finally revealed that their beef was much deeper than we originally thought. And Kelli came to the reunion ready to ask questions that nobody was prepared to answer. So let's get into the Real Housewives of Atlanta Season 17 Part 2. Picking up part 1 where we left off, right? We're picking up exactly where part 1 left us. K. Michelle and Shamea friendship had already been complicated, but now we're getting the story that happened off camera. And honestly, because the off-camera drama is even crazier than what we see on television, because there are no cameras around, there's no producers asking, can you repeat that? There's no Andy saying, let's move on. It's just grown women, emotions, and whatever happens next. And according to the next discussion at the reunion, K. Michelle and Shamea had another confrontation. And this wasn't just a little disagreement. This allegedly became so heated that the question of whether things almost became physical came up. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know exactly what happened, because clearly these women have very different versions of events. But what we do now is whatever happened completely changed the relationship between Shamea and K. Michelle. So we can call this Shamea vs. K. Michelle round 2. Okay, now let's talk about Shamea, because this friendship went from girl, I like you, to girl, I don't trust you, real quick. K. Michelle was still questioning some of the things Shamea had allegedly said about the group not wanting them to be friends. And then we got into conversations around Hamilton. K. Michelle claimed that Mama Winter referred to Porsha as a Jezebel. Shamea denied that this happened. And this is where I started looking at the television like, if somebody's lying, because the stories are not matching. Because one person is saying, I had it, and another person say, I never said that. And without a camera recording the actual moment, we're basically left with two different versions. But there's a bigger issue. Even if we put the Jezebel comment aside, why did this friendship become so toxic so quickly? Because Shamea and K. Michelle didn't just disagree, they started questioning each other's intention. And once you get to that point, friendships become difficult. And then we have Porsha, because somehow, someway, Porsha is always somewhere in the middle. Now, I don't necessarily mean that as an insult, but look at the situation. K. Michelle has an issue with Shamea. Shamea has an issue with Porsha. Porsha has an issue with K. Michelle. Suddenly, everybody's connected, and it's giving the Atlanta friendship web. You need a diagram just to understand who's mad at whom, but Porsha wasn't just sitting there listening. She had receipts, and, that's when Porsha says, I have receipts and you better sit down, because we already know what time it is.
We came at 2 in the morning.
Shamea and her mother come. They should go to the club. It's like 2 in the morning. Baby, Shamea mama came in her white suit with them titties pushed up to her chin.
It pissed me off, because I know how my mom is being painted to look, right?
But your mom literally did say...
Let me finish.
Okay.
I said, Kay, look at this video. This is at 11:50 something. We didn't come at 2 in the morning. She's like, okay, well, fine.
Either way, my mama don't be dancing in no hookah lounge in the middle of Atlanta with a white suit talking about hallelujah and calling her Jezebel in the middle of the club. Calling who a Jezebel? I really do
Calling who a Jezebel?
I saw where K. Michelle said,
Porsha decided to address the accusations surrounding Kelli and the Marine Man storyline, and instead of just going back and forth verbally, she came prepared. Now, this is where housewife reunions are at their best, because talking is one thing, but when somebody comes with evidence, that's when everybody suddenly starts sitting up straight. Porsha's goal was essentially to prove her side of the story and challenge Kelli's version of events. And the conversation got very uncomfortable, because Kelli was trying to explain her perspective while Porsha wasn't exactly buying it. And then we got to we got the suggestion of a lie detector test. Child, a lie detector test? At this point, I said, are this women trying to settle a housewife drama, or are we filming an episode of Maury? Because imagine being on the reunion couch and somebody says, okay, let's put up a polygram. Girl. Now let's move over to Kelli and Phaedra, because Kelli wasn't exactly finished. Kelli had questions about Phaedra's married man accusation, and one thing that seemed to bother Kelli was that Phaedra allegedly didn't come directly to her to ask whether the accusations were true. Instead, Kelli felt like Phaedra should have spoken to her. Honestly, I can't understand why that would bother someone, but because if someone is spreading something about you, you wouldn't rather have your friend call you and say, girl, is this true? Instead of hearing that everybody else has been discussing it. But Phaedra had her own perspective. And that's where this conversation became another classic housewife disagreement. You should have asked me versus why should I have asked you? And child, we're back at square one.
Is that for that person to be Phaedra's friend or Phaedra's
can I ask you a question?
Attorney-client privilege, right.
Kelli Potter from Atlanta wants to know, Phaedra, why do you feel the need to protect a cheating man's infidelities? Does that really and truly protect a family or your lies?
Okay, first of all, this is a client. I'm a member of the bar. Me and my client have absolutely no issues. I didn't bring it up.
But Phaedra, I'm your client. And the fact, let me tell you something, Phaedra. You never actually sat down and asked me anything about this alleged person of who it is. And I'm bothered by that. I done went to your house several times. We done talked several times. You never say, well, Kelli, is it something I need to know? You just insinuated and took on facts, information, and took it for what it is. As your friend, I would have looked at you as a big sister to say, well, Kelli, I just want you to know, is this true? Could this be true? You never asked me.
Now, this was one of the biggest moments of part 2, Pinky and Phaedra, because remember earlier in the season when those two were throwing a little jabs at each other? Well, apparently there was much more happening behind the scenes. There's always more with Real Housewives, and the bankruptcy discussion brought all of the attention right back to the surface. Pinky had been open about her bankruptcy and her belief that the bankruptcy can be used as a business tool, but Phaedra did not seem comfortable with the way Pinky was talking about it. And I have to say, this was one of the moments where I understand both sides. From Pinky's perspective, she's looking at bankruptcy from a business perspective. She says that businesses go through financial difficulties and bankruptcy can be a part of restructuring. But Phaedra's perspective, there are really people attached to that business, employees, investors, people who may have put their money into the company. So Phaedra's questioned whether Pinky was being too casual about the consequences, and Pinky wasn't about to sit there and apologize. And Pinky basically said, if I had to do it again, I would. Child, that woman was not backing down. And this is where the conversation became bigger than bankruptcy, because now we're talking about accountability. When you're a successful entrepreneur, you can look at something as this is simply business, but somebody who lost money might look at the exact same situation as you ruined my life. And that's where this get complicated, because both perspectives can exist at the same time. But the problem is neither woman seemed particularly interested in seeing that. Okay, and the real reason Phaedra and Pinky were beefing, it is because the Pinky and Phaedra situation wasn't just about bankruptcy, but apparently there had been an off-camera conflict between the two women. And according to the reunion discussion, Phaedra had gone to higher ups about something Pinky had said or done, and this was connected to what was described as significant device and a concern that Phaedra apparently took seriously. Now, the ladies were very vague about exactly what happened, and that's actually what made it even more interesting, because whether housewife says we are not going to discuss what happened, I'm immediately like, well, then why did you bring it up? Because now we introduced a mission.
Stand with the bankruptcy proceedings?
To be honest, at first it was very embarrassing just because blogs be blog, and I'm sure everybody here can agree. I'm almost at the finish line, and I'm happy. It's like a rebirth, and I would do it all over again if I had to. The U.S. bankruptcy code is a tool, and I'm sure that there's some other ladies that'll probably do it in the future as well.
I find it very interesting that you think bankruptcy is a tool and it's a positive thing. I mean, I know that you had investors that gave you $25 million. Those were African-American investors. And so,
No, I had white investors too, thank you.
Yeah, but you had plenty of African-Americans.
Yeah, more white than black. So, and next. And it doesn't matter the color. It was institutional capital, private equity money.
I get it, but I just do not take it lightly that it is this banner to a tool.
It is a tool, and I'm gonna tell you why it's a tool, because people really don't know the real story of what happened. Because I'm a professional, I protected a lot of people, and that's none of your business, okay?
And I didn't ask.
But you inserted
and all
yourself.
you do is
It could have happened to you. It could have happened to anybody.
No, it couldn't happen to me because I'm self-funded.
Let me teach you about business.
You don't have to teach me. I'm very successful. I've been in business for 20 years.
Okay, so win some more cases then if you're very successful.
What cases did I lose?
Okay, call Bobby Brown.
Call Bobby Brown.
Anyway,
if I was a bad attorney, baby, I was with Bobby Brown for 8 years. I think he could have replaced.
What was said, what was the device? Why did Phaedra feel the need to involve higher ups? And why was Pinky so upset about it? Those are the questions I still have. But Cynthia enters the chat, and just when the reunion was already packed with drama, Cynthia barely arrives. And let's be honest, Cynthia can talk into a room wearing a bathrobe and somehow still looks like she belongs on the runway. But Cynthia didn't just come to serve looks, she came with information, and one of the biggest surprises of the reunion came from Cynthia. Now, Cynthia's position throughout the season had often been more measured. She's not always the loudest person in the room. She's not necessarily jumping into every argument. But when Cynthia finally speaks, you better listen, because that woman has been observing everything. This reunion was no different. And Cynthia drops a surprise nobody saw coming. And honestly, this was a perfect reminder that sometimes the quietest housewife has the biggest revelation. While everybody else was busy arguing, Cynthia had her own storyline unfolding, and her revelation shifted the mood of the reunion, because suddenly we're not talking about everybody else's drama, now we're talking about Cynthia. And I love that, because it gave the reunion a little bit of balance, and you can't have everybody screaming at each other for 2 hours. Sometimes we need a little, wait, what? And Cynthia delivered that. My biggest takeaway from part 2, is the theme trust. Look at almost every major conflict, K. Michelle and Shamea, Porsha and Kay, Phaedra and Kelli, Pinky and Phaedra, trust and accountability. Everybody seemed to be asking the same question. Can I trust you? And that's what makes this season interesting, because these women don't necessarily hate each other. Sometimes they actually like each other. But once trust is broken, that's when the Atlanta pages start throwing shade. Final thoughts, and honestly, reunion part 2 left me with more questions than answers. What really happened between Shamea and K. Michelle, right? When the cameras were rolling. Was the Jezebel comment really actually made? Was K. Michelle really about to get physical? And what exactly happened between Pinky and Phaedra? Because the scenes and what was the significance of the mysterious device? But, because the situation clearly isn't finished. Baby, it's not. We still have reunion part 3, and according to the preview, K. Michelle is finally going to reveal who she believes was behind the alleged plot against her, and Angela is getting another round of confrontation, and that Porsha and Shamea's friendship, child, the situation may officially be beyond repair. But before we go into part 3, I want to know what you think. Who do you believe about Shamea and K. Michelle's situation? Was K. Michelle telling the truth, or do you believe Shamea's version? And what was about Pinky and Phaedra? Was Phaedra right to question Pinky's attitude towards bankruptcy, or was Pinky simply explaining how she sees business? And finally, did Porsha really bring enough receipt to prove her point about Kelli? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because I know you all have opinions. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure you like those videos, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next Real Housewives recap. And if you're ready for part 3, you already know what I'm going to say. Child, bring the pages. I'll see you in the next one.